I don't know about you guys, but characters are, for me, what makes writing fun. In today's video, I wanted to talk to you guys about my process in creating characters for my running project that I've been doing on the channel. It's still entitled, but it's my fantasy survivor story is what I'm calling it. While I'm working, I'm gonna explain my process and try to point out the most important aspects of my process, things that would be good for others to adapt as well. So let's jump into it. The first thing that I need to do before I even get to the characters is I actually need to go back and change my outline pretty significantly. The outline that I created served its purpose. I wanted to know if I had a story. After I made the video and everything, I realized I didn't really like the story that I'd come up with. Today, I'm gonna make some massive changes to my outline. First off, I'm not loving this premise of a chosen one competition where everybody in the competition is a chosen one. The big reason for this is my current work in progress, The Fourth Wall, plays a lot with the chosen one trope. So at this point, I don't want to do a second book with the chosen one trope in it. So instead, I'm changing it to a competition with a bunch of different characters that fit in fantasy tropes. Next up, the biggest problem I have with fictional competitions is that the protagonist always wins. The thing is though that I personally don't want to write a book where we know that Katniss is gonna win from the beginning. I want this to be set up more like reality TV where you don't know who's gonna win. So I'm taking out my protagonist and I'm taking out my antagonist. And this is something that I wouldn't suggest in a normal book. In fact, I would say go watch my previous video that I did on outlining if you're writing basically any other book. But because what I want to do with this book is to reflect reality, I need this experience to be a little bit different than a normal book. I don't even want to know who's gonna win. I want this fictional book to feel like reality shows. I know it's a little crazy, but it's something that I personally want to explore. So I have to set up the structure in a way that's going to work for me. One thing that comes with removing the protagonist is we also remove my driving factor. So I'm gonna have to remove my character want based structure and lean a lot more on the structure of the game when it comes to kind of the natural ebb and flow of the book towards the climax. The character ups and downs and build towards the climax still need to be there, but I personally can't lean and rely on those since I don't know who the winner is. At least in the first draft. I might come back and update my outline once I know who the winner is, but right now I need some flexibility to find out who the winner is. And I'm actually really loving this because that's how reality shows work. They don't set up who the winner is beforehand, they figure it out and then base the story that they create around the events that just happened. So this is gonna be a fun experiment for me and I don't know how it's gonna turn out, but I'm excited for it either way. Another thing that I have to figure out, I know I said I'm doing characters, but we gotta jump into something else before we do characters, and that is conlaying. I want this story to feel like it comes out of an epic fantasy, so I need to have some conlaying in here. I need to have some cultures. I'm not gonna do any giant world building right now. I'm just gonna get a few parameters so that I have something to go off of to create some names that seem like they come from the same world. I'm creating two different languages. I'm gonna create the main language that all the characters will speak, and then a secondary language that is also spoken in this country. This first language is gonna have a lot of more softer sounds. I'm gonna have a heavy Z sound in it and a heavy oo sound in it, double O, and I'm completely removing a hard sound, the k. Then my second language is going to be kind of the opposite. Instead of soft, it's going to be a harder language. It's going to have a lot of g to k sounds. Also, I'm adding a couple of common vowel sounds with I plus another vowel. Having these rules will make them feel separate. I want to add a caveat about the language documents that I just created. As I go in this process, I add some things to both of them. because I realized that they were a little bit limited. A lot of my names were kind of sounding the same, a lot of Z's, and I'm like, people aren't gonna know the difference. I'm gonna get confused of which character's which. And so I went back, and especially the Z one, I added a few things. I added a W and some other common sounds to kind of give myself a little bit more range and have some more unique names that still feel like they fit within that culture, that language. All right, so let's finally get into making these characters. One thing I want to point out is that I have to do things differently because I don't know who's gonna win. I don't have a protagonist. I have to give all of these characters a little bit more depth than maybe I would for another project. You'll notice that I have a template that I use for every character. This template's different for this project than it is for other projects because this project requires different things. So first off, we have our name. I am trying to use the two languages that I created to come up with names. I am editing this out, but I'm going back and forth between this document and my languages document to make sure that I kind of stick to those rules that I created. Next up is the trope line. This one's super important for this book because I'm basing my characters on tropes and having a bunch of tropey characters meet for this competition. So I don't normally use tropes. What I would have in that spot normally is kind of the role that that character plays in the story. So protagonist, antagonist, maybe the Yoda character that gives like the sage advice. Next is occupation. Occupation is something that we often use as an identifier, so to me it's pretty important to have that figured out. Next up, you'll see key labels. This is just if I need another kind of label. In other stories, I end up using this as like so-and-so's father or something like that. In this situation, I don't know how often I'm gonna be using it. For right now, I probably won't really be messing with it. Next up is species. In some projects I do this, some I don't. In this one specifically, I don't know yet. And I decided that it wasn't important right this instant. Next up was place of origin. I honestly left this one alone in the entire time. I didn't touch it. That's because I don't know if it's important yet, and I don't know a ton about the world. I am not doing anything with the picture one today. I'll use it often when I actually get to the writing process. I'll add a picture in there so that I can get a really good idea of what this person looks like. Today, I'm just adding stuff into the physical description. Usually I struggle with the physical description and need the picture in order to get something on that line, but today I actually did a really good job and got a lot of physical descriptions out there. Personality description, this one is super important to me because character drives the story. Their physical description doesn't drive the story as much as how they react to it, what they think about it, and things like that. So personality is core. I always do personality, but I don't have to have a ton. You'll notice on some of these that I don't put a ton out there, and some of them I put a little bit more. One that I definitely don't ever do is reason to win. I need to know why every character signed on to this competition and why they want to win. Normally, I also wouldn't worry too much about backstory. I feel like that often for me comes as I work on the story. But today, again, I needed it for every single character because I don't know why they want to be there if I don't know where they've been coming from. Reason for being on the team was also kind of important to me, but not for the characters, more for the overall story, because I am setting up a reality game, and I decided that I wanted to have a kind of gimmick where characters are teams together based off something. I chose 4 characteristics: independent, cunning, brave, and honest. But it's not the most important aspect, and I would definitely not have that in any other story. What I would actually do for this part is I would kind of outline their role in the story. So for example, let's say I have my Yoda sage advice character. I would type out exactly how that person is that sage character, how they give that sage advice to the main character, and then I would put them all together into an outline. If you are interested in me showing that process, I would love to do that. Unfortunately, it's not going to be done for this specific story. Also, I would love to know what you guys do to create characters. What's your process? Thanks for joining me on this fun experiment that I'm doing, and I will see you guys in the next adventure.